Hello, and welcome once again to Lehtos Law. I'm Steve Lehto, attorney at law in the state of Michigan, where I've been practicing law now for 25 years in the fields of consumer protection and lemon law. I often write about this stuff for places like roadandtrack.com, and I've written a few books as well. Today we're going to talk about, can the police stop your car and search it without probable cause? Or can the police stop your car and search it without your permission? And what do they need to do that? Well, the reason this comes up is anytime I write an article about the police, traffic stops, or anything like that, I always get comments from people who say, you don't have to do any of that stuff. This guy doesn't know what he's talking about. You are free to just kind of like do what you want by the side of the road and ignore cops. Well, you're free to do whatever you want, okay? But if you want to actually know what you're allowed to do legally, I'm going to explain it to you because I am an attorney. So again, I'm licensed in the state of Michigan. What I'm telling you is rock solid advice in Michigan and is probably true where you are as well, because the law that governs this actually comes from the U.S. Supreme Court, but we'll talk about that as well. But the key here is a police officer pulls you over for whatever reason. What can you do and what do you have to do if asked by the police officer? So it often goes like this. I write an article, I say, if you get pulled over by a cop, here's what you do. And I always get the comment from somebody who says, you don't have to do anything. You can leave your window rolled up. You can refuse to talk to the cop. Some people have actually said you don't have to pull over. Try that and see what happens. But here's the thing. What we're talking about, whether you're being detained at the side of the road or questioned in public, the Fourth Amendment to the Constitution, remember the Bill of Rights, the 10 amendments, okay? First, second, okay? Well, the fourth is the one that talks about the right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects, against unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated, and no warrants shall issue but upon probable cause. And now you'll notice it doesn't mention automobiles, but it does mention your effects. And they didn't have cars back then, okay? Bill of Rights was written back in the 1700s. So they were anticipating that there are going to be things we have that we have a right of some sort of privacy to, although the right of privacy does not exist in that exact sense in the Constitution or the Bill of Rights. But the Fourth Amendment is what we talk about with respect to searches and seizures, okay? Searches and seizures. And we're talking today about traffic stops. So you're driving along the road one day, minding your own business. As far as you know, you're not doing anything wrong. You see the lights going behind you. You pull over to the side of the road. That is what we call a traffic stop. Now, it doesn't take a lot of work to figure this out, but the police officer who's pulling you over does not have a warrant to pull you over, unless you're living really dangerously and there's actually warrants out for your arrest. But let's assume for a moment that we're talking about a warrantless traffic stop. Now, some people, and I know this because I get the comments on the website and so on, some people say, Steve, the police officer cannot pull you over because he hasn't got a warrant. Well, here's the thing. The U.S. Supreme Court has ruled on a variety of issues arising from traffic stops and other detentions, and has pointed out that our society would crumble if police officers weren't allowed to do anything without warrants. So there's a couple things they are allowed to do, and one of them is a traffic stop. So if a police officer witnesses you breaking the law or doing something that is illegal, which I guess would be breaking the law, okay, some kind of traffic violation, and he sees that, or she sees that, they can pull you over without a warrant. There's a variety of reasons for this, not the least of which is that quite often traffic setting does not involve a crime. It often involves a civil infraction, okay? So this is not a crime even in the first place. So a police officer pulls you over for speeding, for instance, in the state of Michigan and writes you a ticket for doing 10 over. It's a civil infraction. It's not even a crime. But here's the point. For them to pull you over, the courts have ruled that they can do that if they have a reasonable suspicion that you've broken the law. And a reasonable suspicion means they suspect you've broken the law. That's the word suspicion. But reasonable means they have to have it based upon a reason. So a police officer can't just drive along and say, I think that looks suspicious. No other reason that it just looks suspicious to me. Police officer can't pull you over for that purpose. Now, we all know that if you look suspicious and act suspicious, a police officer can pull you over and then later say, well, I did it because, and they can probably conjure up something that sounds reasonable. But simply put, they need to have a reasonable suspicion that you've broken the law. Then they can detain you briefly, okay? and this is a temporary detainment. They're not arresting you. They're simply detaining you to determine whether or not a law has been broken, determine whether or not you're the one who broke it, and so on and so forth. And there's a law, a Supreme Court case called Terry versus Ohio, 1968. So this goes back a ways, where the U.S. Supreme Court said a couple things regarding detentions. And they said that they can, and it's become called a Terry stop, but a police officer can detain you briefly upon reasonable suspicion to determine whether or not a crime's happened and whether or not you're the person who did it. And not only can they stop you, but they can also pat you down for weapons. And this is the real big issue that arose in Terry versus Ohio. Because here's the issue, okay? A police officer's talking to you, okay? They're just talking. They're interacting with you verbally. The moment the police officer says, I would like to pat you down for weapons, they're actually touching your body. They're putting their hands on you. And as anybody who's gone through TSA knows, it's not a pleasant experience to have a total stranger just patting you down, okay? Now, I understand that, there's a lot of different contexts here, but a police officer can also pat you down for weapons. Now, this is the big distinction. So let's suppose you have a piece of paper in your pocket that's just got some notes written on it that are somehow evidence of a crime, and it's folded flat, it's stuck in your pocket in such a way that it's obviously not a weapon, it's not contraband, it's nothing. If a police officer pats you down, finds no weapons, finds no drugs, but says, what's this piece of paper, and reaches in and pulls that piece of paper out, that's probably going too far, because the Terry stop, where they're allowed to pat you down for weapons, is supposed to be unintrusive and simply to determine whether or not you are a threat to the police officer or to the public at large. So what this does with respect to a traffic stop is a typical traffic stop goes like this. You're driving along, lights go on, you pull over to the side of the road, police officer walks up to your car and says, do you know how fast you're going? And as I've told you before, the correct answer to that is I'm not sure. I think I was doing the speed limit, but I'm not sure. However, police officers will often at this point then say things such as, would you mind getting out of the car? May I look in your car? May I search your car? Will you pop the trunk to your car? And that's where the gray area becomes. Because according to the law in most states, and particularly in Michigan, a police officer can, number one, ask to see your driver's license, registration, and proof of insurance. And that's simply because you are required by law to have those three things on you. And so it's not considered to be too intrusive, and it's not considered to even need probable cause or even reasonable suspicion, because you're driving a car. You need to have those things on you. Okay, it's the same. Your car needs a license plate too. And so police officer pulls you over and says, "Can I see these three things?" You hand him or her those three things. You've now complied with that. Now, the police officer might return to your car and say, "Okay, this all checks out. Get out of the car." Now, you're going to have to get out of the car. And the reason you have to get out of the car is that a police officer, again, like I said before, can do a quick pat down to make sure you haven't got weapons on you. And I know many people are saying, wait, why would you do a pat down on a guy sitting in a car with weapons? But theoretically, it's something they can do. Okay, the pat down's unintrusive. The line gets drawn, though, at the car itself. So if they ask, can I look in your car, can I search your car, you are free to say no. No, thank you. I'd prefer that you didn't. Now, here's the thing. For them to search your car when they've got nothing else to go on except that they saw you run a red light, for instance, okay? They don't have probable cause to search the car, and they don't have reasonable suspicion to search the car. The running the traffic light's got nothing to do with whether something's in your car, contraband in your car. So they don't have the right to search your car without a warrant and without your permission. And this is the extremely tricky part, because police officers will usually ask, may I search your car? Okay? And they ask that because if you say yes, all the rest of it goes out the window. They don't need a warrant. They don't need reasonable suspicion. They don't need probable cause. They don't need anything if you give them permission. And they know that the average person doesn't know this, and the average person is scared to say, no, you can't search my car. So a police officer asks, may I search your car? You say, no, thank you. Okay? I advise you to put the word thank you on the end, the words, because it'll sound polite. No, thank you. And they'll say, why not? And you say, I saw a video by a guy named Steve Lehto, who's an attorney, and he said I can say that. Okay? Or you can just say, I don't know, the Constitution. Bill of Rights? I don't know. I don't think I have to give you a reason. Now, what's weird about this is, and I will be truthful with you, honestly here, to an embarrassing extent. I can actually think of 3 different occasions where I had police officers searching my car, and this goes way back. And I actually one time got pulled over driving about 3 o'clock in the morning. And looking back on it now, I think I simply pulled over because it was late, 3 o'clock in the morning. And a police officer asked me, what are you doing out so late? And I told him I was coming home from work. And then he said, asked me some other questions. Where are you going? Where are you from? That kind of thing. And then said, can I look in your car? And I was about 21 or 22 years old at the time. And I thought, nothing in the car. Knock yourself out. Go right ahead. Cop dug around in the car for a few minutes, found nothing. Goes, can I look in your trunk? Again, I've got nothing to hide. I could have said no, but I said, sure, go right ahead. Pops the trunk, pokes around in their little beings. Oh, okay. Because you're free to go. Okay? So, now, I didn't have to do that. I probably didn't even know at the time that I could have refused. Can I look in your trunk? No. Can I search your car? No. No, thank you. Okay? I, on another occasion, was in a vehicle and with somebody else, and the police officers approached and said, can I search your car? And I said, sure, go ahead. And now I was outside the car, and one of the cops actually came back and goes, okay, whose cocaine is that? Cop doesn't know me. Okay, I don't drink. I've never smoked. And I've never even seen cocaine in real life, I don't think. I've seen it in the movies. Scarface had mountains of it on his desk. I've never touched cocaine, used cocaine. I would take a drug test any day of the week, any day of the year, going back 20 years going forward till the day I die, and I'll guarantee you I'll do a 0.0 on any test you give me. So when the cop goes, whose cocaine is that? I looked at him and I go, there's no cocaine in that car. And he goes, yeah, there is. Whose is it? And I look at him and I go, dude, why are you lying to me? And the cop just turned around and he walked away. And he's hoping I was going to say, you found the cocaine I hid in that secret compartment? Oh my gosh, how'd you find that compartment? But, looking back on it, I'm like, that's why you don't give them permission to search your car. They're just going to be jerks about it, okay? There's nothing in the car. So he just thought he'd make the afternoon a little more exciting by saying, whose cocaine is that? So why bother? So here's the deal, okay? You're pulled over by the side of the road. Police officer approaches the car. He can ask you for your driver's license, your registration, your proof of insurance. He can ask you other questions, but you don't have to answer them. I would advise you to answer them politely as best you can, but if he says, can I search your car? You say, I'm sorry, no thank you. Can I look in your trunk? No thank you. He's just going to lie and say he found cocaine anyways, right? And then if he says, get out of the car, well, you got to get out of the car. Okay, get out of the car. If he decides to do a Terry pat down, well, let him do the Terry pat down. I'm hoping you're not carrying a weapon that you don't, shouldn't have on you. And that's about as far as it should go. Now, the one thing I also need to point out to you is that as a police officer approaches your car, the car has windows in it, right? They can see in the windows. So if there's something in plain view in the car, okay, you got a big old bale of marijuana on the seat next to you, and you don't have a marijuana medical card that allows you to carry it by the bale. A police officer walks up and says, driver's license, registration, proof of insurance. And by the way, what's that bale of marijuana doing on the passenger seat? You can't say, hey, you've got no warrant. You can't search my car. Well, it's in plain view, okay? So there's some obvious exceptions to these constitutional rights you've got. Likewise, if a police officer walks up to your front door, knocks on the door, and looks in the window and sees the machine gun on your coffee table, he can say, by the way, is that a machine gun? Do you have a license for that? It's in plain view. So plain view is one of the exceptions. If they can see with their own eyes, they don't need a warrant to go and say, hey, I saw it. Can I get a warrant to do it, okay? So the whole point is against unreasonable searches and seizures, and it's not unreasonable for a police officer to use his own or her own eyeballs to look inside your car while he or she is talking to you, okay? So be aware of the plain view exception also. But one of the things I'd like to talk about and very, very briefly explain is the traffic stop itself, okay, can only be as long as necessary for the police officer to conduct his business for the traffic stop. So let's assume you ran the red light I mentioned earlier, okay? Police officer walks up, says, hey, do you know how fast you're going? Do you know why I pulled you over? Okay, you ran a red light, whatever. Driver's license, registration, proof of insurance, takes him back to his car, runs them all, comes back, he hands you a ticket. The traffic stop is over at that point. Now, of course, if the police officer wants to chit-chat with you for a little bit, chit-chat a little bit, okay? But there was a case very, very recently in Michigan where a guy got pulled over, I believe on I-94. Traffic stop went down just like that. The cop actually walked up, gave him all his information, said, you know something? Can I look in your trunk? And the guy goes, no, you can't look in my trunk. And the police officer goes, well, you know, I can get a warrant if I want to. By the way, that's one of their favorite tricks. They'll go, I can get a warrant. Yeah, you can. It'll take you a while, and quite frankly, it'll probably take longer than this traffic stop. But be that as it may, cop goes, I can get a warrant. And the guy goes, whatever, but you don't have my permission. So the police officer then called a canine unit, and a canine, by the way, which is not a warrant, unless the dog's name was Warrant. Come here, Warrant. So the police officer calls a canine unit who shows up a little while later, and the canine unit walks around the guy's car and reacts to something in the trunk. Now he says, I've got probable cause because my dog is reacting, saying there's something in the trunk. They pop the trunk, they find dealer quantities of marijuana, cocaine, I forgot what it was, but it was contraband, and there's no question it was illegal. So they arrest the guy, and of course, the Exhibit A in his trial is going to be this stuff that they seized after the police dog alerted to the presence of something in the trunk of the car. But it was after the traffic stop was concluded, and the police officer had given the guy the ticket, and then said, I'm going to detain you longer because I just have the suspicion, but not based upon any reason. Michigan's Court of Appeals correctly threw out that case and said you cannot prosecute that man based upon the stuff you found in his trunk that you did with a search that took place after the detention should have ended on the traffic stop. Okay? So if they're going to pull you over, and the pretext of pulling you over is a traffic stop, they're allowed to conduct the traffic stop for however long the traffic stop ought to be, and when it ends, it has to be over, and you can go on your way. Okay? The police officer admitted at the hearing that they had in that guy's case that, yeah, I was done. I handed the guy's ticket, and that was the end of that. And then I just had a thought, hey, I wonder what's in his trunk. Well, hey, when you have a thought that begins with the phrase, hey, generally speaking, that's not going to overcome the Fourth Amendment's strictures on when a reasonable or unreasonable search and seizure has taken place. So the right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable search and seizures shall not be violated, and no warrants shall issue but upon probable cause. So keep in mind what's happening on the side of the road is not probable cause. It is the reasonable suspicion the police officer has that you committed a crime or a traffic violation, pulls you over for that. They can deal with that. They can even have you get out of the car. They can ask you for identification and papers, that go along with you driving, but they can't detain you for any longer than the traffic stop. And if they ask you questions such as, can I look in the trunk of your car or can I search your car, you are free to say, no, thank you. I'd prefer that you didn't. So that's what the police can and cannot do when they stop your car without probable cause, but with reasonable suspicion, or as this title most likely is going to read, can the police stop your car and search it without probable cause? Questions or comments, shoot them my way, LehtosLaw.com. I'm on Twitter at Steve Lehto, at SteveLehto. And this show is on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Podbean, Google Play, and YouTube. Thanks for watching and listening. Bye-bye.